You ever hit a wall with some big, complex idea? Something that just feels so dense you can't even find a way in? Well, what if I told you there's a secret to unlocking pretty much any subject just by finding its one single foundational truth? Okay, let's dive into this powerful way of thinking. The great physicist Richard Feynman really nailed it with this one. It's so true, right? We all start at zero, not knowing anything. The real trick is figuring out the best way to learn. And a lot of the time, that means going all the way back to the beginning. And this isn't just some random thought experiment. This was a real problem a scientist had to solve. Imagine that. You have to explain one of the most famously complicated topics on Earth to a group of brilliant people who have, well, absolutely no background in it. I mean, where do you even start? Well, the answer comes down to asking one simple question. What's the absolute most fundamental truth I can start with? The one single idea that everything else is built on. That's it. That's the secret. Finding that one foundational truth. And that right there is what we call a first principle. It's super important to know this isn't an analogy. It's not a simplification. It is the truth. It's the bedrock, the core idea that holds everything else up. Once you really get it, you can build a whole skyscraper of understanding, all on your own. So let's see how this works in the real world. All right, let's start with a force we all know intimately, one we feel every single second of our lives. But here's the twist. It's also the weakest force in the entire known universe. Yep, we're talking about gravity. That's it. Seriously, that is the first principle of gravity. It's not just that planets pull on moons, it's that every single thing with mass pulls on every other thing. Your coffee cup is pulling on you, you're pulling on your chair, everything. From this one beautifully simple rule, we can understand the entire cosmos. And here is the paradox that makes gravity so fascinating. On the one hand, it's ridiculously weak. I mean, you can defy the gravitational pull of the entire planet just by lifting your arm. But because that pull is always attractive, it never cancels out. It just adds and adds and adds. And when you get enough mass together, that weak, persistent little pull becomes strong enough to build planets, ignite stars, and shape entire galaxies. In fact, you can get really specific with this. For any rocky body out in space, there's a kind of magic number, around 600 kilometers in diameter. Once an object gets that big, its own gravity becomes stronger than the materials it's made of. It literally crushes itself into the most efficient shape possible, a sphere. And that is why little asteroids look like potatoes, but big planets are round. Okay, this brings up the classic question, right? If the Earth is pulling on the moon, why doesn't it just come crashing down? People were stumped by this for centuries, but the answer is one of the most elegant insights ever, and it flows right from our first principle. It's kind of funny. The science fiction author Douglas Adams summed it up perfectly. The moon is falling. It's falling toward the Earth constantly. The secret is, it keeps missing. Newton figured this out with an amazing thought experiment. Picture a cannon on a super tall mountain. Fire a cannonball and gravity pulls it down. Okay, fire it faster and it goes farther before it hits the ground. But what if you could fire it at an insane speed, like 18,000 kilometers an hour? Well, then something incredible happens. As the cannonball falls, the Earth's surface curves away underneath it at the exact same rate. It's in a state of perpetual falling, but it never gets any closer to the ground. That's an orbit. And that's exactly what the moon is doing right now. Okay, so we've got gravity. Now let's completely flip the script. We're going to use the same way of thinking to look at another force. One that goes from being the weakest in the universe to one that is almost unimaginably strong, but hides in plain sight. We're talking about the electromagnetic force. How much stronger is it than gravity? Get ready for this. It's 10 to the power of 40 times stronger. That is a one with, count 'em, 40 zeros after it. It's a number so big, it basically breaks our brains. So to wrap our heads around that, let's talk about a mosquito. A mosquito is made of atoms, right? Positive bits and negative bits called electrons. If you could somehow just snap your fingers and remove all the electrons from one mosquito, The leftover positive parts would repel each other so violently, the explosion would be equal to the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. I'm not kidding. That's the power locked inside a single mosquito. So that, of course, leads to a very obvious question. If there's dinosaur-killing energy packed into a mosquito, why don't we feel it? Why aren't we just blasted apart by the person standing next to us? And the answer, once again, is a beautifully simple first principle. It all comes down to perfect balance. In pretty much all the matter we see around us, every positive charge has a negative charge partner, and they cancel each other out so perfectly that we don't feel a thing. So here's the fundamental difference between the two forces. Gravity is a one-trick pony. It only attracts. So its power always adds up, making it the boss on the cosmic scale. But electromagnetism attracts and repels. This means in our normal, neutral world, its mind-boggling power stays perfectly hidden, canceled out by its own internal balance. And the secret to unlocking all that hidden power? You just have to mess with the balance. That's it. That's all electricity is. Whether it's the chaotic blast of a lightning strike or the steady flow of power coming out of your wall socket, it's all just the result of intentionally knocking that perfect balance out of whack. So we've broken down two of the universe's most fundamental forces, right down to their simple core truths. So what's the big takeaway? How does this become a new toolkit that you can actually use? Well, what this really shows us is something amazing. All the wild, beautiful, overwhelming complexity we see all around us, it isn't really that complex deep down. Most of the time, it's just a few incredibly simple, elegant rules playing out over and over again. So think of this method as your new secret weapon. It lets you slice right through the noise, the jargon, and all the complicated stuff to find what's actually real. You stop just memorizing facts and you start building a true understanding from the ground up. You'll start to see connections nobody else does, and you can tackle any subject with total clarity. So I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about something in your life, your career, a hobby you love, a skill you're trying to learn. Can you strip away all the stuff people say about it, all the assumptions and analogies, and find the single foundational truth at its very core? What is its first principle?